Uh, uh, Hello, welcome to all our panelists and our viewers. This is the Roundtable series, from the columnists of Nickel and Dine Center for New Economic Studies. It's a monthly exercise where we debate and deliberate on a lot of issues, contemporary issues. Today, the environment cluster and the public policy cluster at the Center for New Economic Studies will deliberate on the issues of circular economy and the nuances and the details around circular economy. We are joined by Soumya, Yuvraj, Amandeep, and Diti. Soumya, would you like to take over and give us a brief introduction of what circular economy is and what are we discussing today?
Sure. So resources have been at the core of development, and their ease of access has increased significantly over the years. This has led to indiscriminate usage of these resources for economic benefits, but it does have its drawbacks. So the Global Footprint Network, it just told about how how the earth is consuming more resources than are being regenerated by nature, which means that we're actually squandering our natural capital and jeopardizing the future supplies, which contributes to deforestation, carbon dioxide accumulation, and a lot of such problems for the atmosphere, which is leading to climate change. But whenever we think about, making things better, and I hear the words or phrases like sustainable development, it sounds to me more like an oxymoron, because most people think that there exists this continuous trade-off between environment and profit in our everyday practices. As a result, the issue today we are discussing is about development which uses resources sustainably without eclipsing the economic domain. That is why we're talking about a circular economy, which does take into consideration sustainable practices that take care of nature, but it also makes sure that we have economic benefits. So let's begin by sharing our understanding of the term circular economy. And what do you all think? Does it just concern with production processes, or is this something that has to be incorporated in the post-production processes too?
So, in my opinion, a circular economy is primarily an economic system. I say that because it addresses the chain of supply and demand that we have right now is linear. And so my understanding revolves around concepts that would extend the lifespan of a certain product. This may involve leasing, recycling, reusing, repairing, refurbishing. Getting to the second part of your question, if it's just in the production process, or is there change to be in the post-production process as well? So it's of course important to have these changes and incorporate them in the production process, because it addresses how we source the resources that we're using for the production of a certain product and how we manage these resources. But that's not sufficient, because it's also important to address these changes and the circular economy in the post-production process, as the lifespan of the product just begins in the post-production process. So a very key question that the circular economy itself addresses is waste generation and management. This is something that arises in the post-production process. So the waste management system that we have today is largely inefficient, and moving from our current linear to a circular economy would involve adapting the current practices that we have. Like, we would have to have proper collection of waste, proper segregation of that waste, and recycling of the waste that is produced. The goal of a circular economy is to minimize the waste that is produced and recycle whatever is generated. So no loop is left open-ended, and every material, every resource, every product is used to its fullest potential, is disposed of in a proper manner, and is recycled as well. So basically, summarizing what I just said, the circular economy, to my understanding, is a very practical approach in the economic system, comprising of the three basic R's, basic three R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle, and incorporating changes that are discussed in the circular economy in the production and post-production process would aid sustainably.
I think you said that very aptly when we talk about things like the R's and we talk about, how it is so pertinent for the economy. This example comes to my mind of the Tokyo Olympics 2022, wherein what they did was that so basically circular economy is not just about benefits about the environment, but also it has some strategic importance to it. So when we talk about resources which are not in abundance in our country or in some other country, for example metals that have to be extracted and mined, so Tokyo Olympics 2022 was based on this idea of sustainability, where what they did was that they used the metals that they extracted from electronic waste, for example mobile phones or other electronic materials which the public had donated. They used those electronic waste materials and they extracted precious metals like gold and silver out of it to make the medals for Olympics. So it did save costs and also prevented the country from negative externalities because of mining. So I think that way circular economy, when lent practicality, is really, really useful. Anybody who'd like to add?
I think very, very insightful points raised by both Ramya and DT. I'd like to also point out what DT said, extended point, that what about practicing recycling or all of that in terms of waste generation, because post production you get waste, but not a lot of it is recycled, right? So to get the mechanism of the entire circular economy in place, we need to sort out the different components separately and make them work individually as well, because if I'm not wrong, there's some statistic that say that only 30% of the total waste is ever recycled. That's a very grim kind of a statistic, right? The data doesn't point towards a circular economy or the ease of transitioning into a circular economy. But of course, we can delve into that perspective later on. I think we can move on to the next question. Okay, right, all right. A multi-sector economy, poses challenges for policy design, right? But it brings along various opportunities too. In your opinion, which sectors of the Indian economy provide considerable opportunities for transition towards a circular economy?
Yeah, so I would like to take this question. So I feel that the food and the transportation sector can play an important role, because as per the UN, 25% of the food produced is wasted in our in our country. And so if we can collect the food waste along with along with the other type of waste, like the market waste or the agricultural waste, then we can make CNG out of that, and which can be fed into our transportation industry as well. And we can also see that a lot of cities across our nation has also taken this initiative to introduce CNG buses. And for example, Indore has aimed for 400 CNG bus, and Pune has also aimed for 100 CNG buses. And also recently our PM has also opened the Asia's largest CNG plant in our nation. And apart from the food and the transportation sector, I also feel that the metal industry has it also has a lot of potential, in the sense that metals have a high rate of recyclability. So the metals which are used in cars, so we can recycle them up to 95%, and those which are used in the infrastructure, we can use those so we can recycle those up to 80%. And then we can also use lag, which is a byproduct of the steel industry, and then we can use it for the cement industry as well. And the cement industry can also use fly ash, which is also a byproduct of the coal plants. So I feel most of the Indian economy sectors can provide considerable opportunities for the economic transitions. Yeah, so that was my point.
Thank you, Viraj. Anybody else would like to add to that point?
Sure. I think apart from this, the construction sector also provides a lot of opportunity for eco-innovation, because concepts like eco bricks, which use plastic, which has been like converted for construction materials, sounds like a great idea, because that way we are using plastic and increasing its utility after it has been disposed of. And we also reduce the harmful effects from other non-sustainable products that are used for construction. So I think that could be a great idea. Apart from that, I also feel that if we talk about something which is common to some industries, it is the generation of wastewater, like common to most industries. So ideas like the ones which have been taken up by Surat, which is a model city for zero liquid waste, I think that could be a great idea, because what they do is that they reuse wastewater and they are generating revenue from that. So I think though circular economy focuses on different sectors, but things that are actually waste generated across all sectors could also be taken up as an opportunity to tie up all sectors into this sustainability chain. I also think, like, when we talk about different sectors in the economy, we understand that the transition from linear to a circular economy will have unavoidable consequences for industrial employment generation. But do you believe that it will also entail the exclusion of like various number of the unskilled labor, especially in a developing nation like India, even while it promises to give a boost in the innovative employment? So for a country like India, where we know there's widespread unemployment because of unskilled labor, what do you think would be the repercussions of a circular economy transition?
I would like to take that question. So I think that regarding the labor force, I mean, today itself, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he was in Germany, and he was talking about India having 5% of the global emissions share, while having just 15% of the global population. And that ties up neatly into the idea of historicity, that maybe the right question isn't asking whether the transition from linear to circular will have an impact on employment. Of course it will, and that's how all revolutions have been: the industrial revolution, the technological revolution, and to some extent any sort of abrupt transition or a forced transition will lead to employment changes. But the need here is to adapt and ensure that the employment opportunities available are better, more refined, more cleaner, in the sense that we do not want to end up in a situation where the reuse, recycle, and the reduction industries, the three R's, are built a on a mountain of forced labor and extortion and torture of and bad, just basically bad labor practices, the way they happen in the mining industries and the various other industries as we know it today. So I think more than the employment challenges, there are multiple employment opportunities here, where the emerging circular economy as an industry is in its own right, it gives us various opportunities to reform our labor practices, the way labor is treated as just human capital. Maybe it's also a good moment to go beyond the concept of human capital and think about human resources as such. So yeah, that.
Makes sense, but the question still remains for me is that, Like if we talk about a circular economy and we talk about improvement in the working conditions, I do see a lot of improvement in working conditions in the job sectors which are more formal. But what about the informal job sectors? I don't see any improvement in their conditions, like a vast improvement in their conditions. And if we bring something like circular economy where we need innovative skilled labor to carry out activities, then the basic wages, which are the provision in the only provision in the informal sector actually, that will also be lost, because we don't need unskilled labor then, right? So for example, if I have to produce eco bricks, how do I ensure employment of masons is the question. But I get your point that there are some costs involved in every transition, and I guess this is the one of the major costs that will be involved in this transition, but it'll always lead us to better. And with increasing literacy rates, I think things will be better in future.
Thank you, Soumya and Amandeep, for a very kind of like almost sort of like a debate, but we'll move on to the final question probably. Do you think the concept of circular economy will actually help avert the climate crisis, or and what are the problems associated with the circular economy? Is it feasible in a developing country like India, or is it another developed world technocratic fantasy?
So I'd like to take up this question. As everyone's already mentioned, the circular economy is employing various measures like reducing, reusing, recycling, eliminating waste, minimizing material sourcing, the material sustainably, um, controlling resource consumption, and in turn, this will all reduce emissions. So all of this together would have a positive impact on the climate crisis that we're facing today. And in my opinion, the relationship between a circular economy and climate change mitigation is that shifting to a circular economy would reduce the carbon emissions from major industries like we just talked about: mining, manufacturing, building, transportation. But also renewable energy sources would power this economy, as recycling of energy is not possible. But yeah, there are certain obstacles that come in the way of achieving a completely circular economy. I think the biggest one would be having proper and efficient business plans that would work in this economy. So all business models that we currently have in the linear economy would have to change, and an ideal one would involve keeping customers' expectations in check, keeping in line with government laws, increasing waste treatment facilities, and um, increasing recycling technologies, and also have sourcing energies in a sustainable manner. So there would be a lot of challenges in the way, including labor, as we just talked about. But I also want to like moving to the last part of the question, about developing countries like India and developed nations. Um, so if we look at it, the linear economy in which products are that we have today, in which products are created from raw material, sold, used, thrown away as trash, this has not benefited developing nations. Instead, it's created more problems for us that we have to tackle today, and it's adding to the climate crisis. So developing nations like India, they have limited access to affordable commodities, and this all these commodities that would raise the standard of living in the nation for the people. So these nations do not profit from the exploitation of raw materials and export to industrialized nations as much as they should. And the majority of developing nations, including India, do not have infrastructure or product inventories that can recycle, fix, or reuse material. Fortunately, they do generate a lot less trash than industrialized nations and industrialized and developed nations. So, circular economies, the benefits of circular economies goes beyond recycling, repairing, refurbishing used items imported from industrialized nations. Developing countries actually have an upper hand in this situation because they can create industries that are resource efficient. In nations that are already industrialized, industries have been created over decades to maximize the linear economy and work in that economy. So this can make the move to the circular economy now difficult. The opportunity to plan and develop new firms, businesses, and industries for the circular economy exists in many developing nations, including India, that are not completely in the linear economic system.
Great points, Aditi. Anybody would like to extend or argue against any point that she raised?
Yeah,
Yes, Amandeep.
I would love to go ahead. Okay, thank you. So I totally agree with what Didi has pointed out. Of course, that the concept of a circular economy does not have to be a developed world's paradise. And well, I would like to extend the conversation and talk about the aversion of climate change and how far the circular economy concept can contribute towards that. Well, I think alongside developing a circular economy, it's also important to develop a more resilient, more efficient economy at the same time. And I think these are two concepts that we need to ingrain and imbibe within our pursuit of a circular economy, because the production process itself is using thousands of liters of water. And this is why it is pointed out that no matter if you drive, I don't know, a Mercedes Benz or a Toyota Prius, it doesn't make much of a difference on the environment at an individual level. Because I think the point here being that while the idea of a circular economy is to take our collective recycling and take our collective efforts to a greater level, and that's definitely a good thing. But the development of a circular economy would have its limits given our current state of technology, and we have to accept that fact. So I think we need to make the production process itself more resilient, and that's where some immediate gains can be had, and those immediate gains can then go on to finance the transition to a circular economy, is what I would like to suggest here. And alternatives to the developed world's resources include that we have our own innovative examples of the circular economy system for thousands of years. So I think that is what we need to focus on, and it does not have to be just an imitation of the West. So yeah, with that, I'd like to rest my point.
Yes, great points, Mandeep as well. Like both of you raise great points. As you mentioned, like we should not imitate, or developing countries should have no really point in imitating the developed world. But also there is the thing about costs as well, right? When you have to have the technology to be able to recycle and all of that in place, the question about cost is extremely important. And even more important is who will pay the price, basically, right? Is it the government that's going to pay for much of the costs that are related to the maintaining the framework, or will they have to incentivize the corporations to do so? Yes, Soumya, you had your hands up. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add to what you said about who is going to pay. So the fact that most economies today, irrespective of whether they are developing or developed, are not able to transition to a complete circular economy is because there is this added pressure of incentivizing everyone across the value chain, which at times becomes difficult with new policies. So for example, if I change my, so if for example, people who are scrap dealers and they collect stuff from my place, if there is no incentive for them to collect the glass bottles and get something like a deposit fee or a kind of reward for doing that and taking my glass bottle to a recycling place, then they won't do it. So unless and until we have a correct system of rewards and punishment in place, irrespective of having the resources to tackle the costs, etc., it would not be possible to completely transition to a circular economy. So I think any country, like a developing or developed country which is trying to transition to a circular economy, the biggest challenge today will be to put this system in place wherein people have, so this is responsibility is not merely assumed, but it also has to be imposed at certain point of time to ensure complete transition.
Yeah, great extension, Soumya. Like as you mentioned about punishing and rewarding, like carrots and sticks, that would remind me of some kind of legal provisions, right? Whether there are any sort of legal provisions or mandates regarding circular economy, whether it exists or not, because we have to really look at the legal side first before provisioning any of that any of the things that we have discussed. And it's a very important in that sense, right? If there is no legal provision backing it, then hardly there is going to be any change. Perhaps there is some already, right? We can see in some other sectors there are things called CSR, corporate social responsibility, all of that. Perhaps something might be included already in the legal frame with respect to circular economy, but we don't know. And if that is not working, then the problem entirely may be structural, right? Then we have to rethink and reanalyze everything else. So I think great kind of investigation is required in terms of structural economy and circular economy when it comes to India and India specific, basically, right? Because you can't be, as you had all mentioned, that it just can't be an imitation of the West. Yeah, if there is no further point, I think it's been a great conversation. Thank you all for joining in. Thank you to our viewers as well for tuning in, and I hope it was as enriching for you all as well as it was for me. And yeah, I think we are good to go. If it's all right, thank you.